to forge the narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. We are the Bell Lost Souls podcast. I'm joined by Chris Morgan.
Oh, I love this week.
And Val Heffelfinger.
Oh, are you ready for Vegas?
So the road to the LVO, our coverage is coming to a close. Why? Because the LVO is here.
The road has come to an end.
I've still got about 6 hours to drive in left, but yeah, pretty much.
It's leaving next week. We'll record next week, so we'll have an episode next week, but then I get on a plane Thursday, head to Vegas, join, 2,000 people.
I'm going to do my absolute best not to abuse my Nexus privileges and miss my flight this year. Because before I had my passport in my shoe, I missed my LVO flight in that year. I was Warhammer travel cursed last year. Also had a blown tire in another one. So 2019, the new year, no more travel mishaps for Val Heffelfinger.
It's going to be good. We have some stats. We don't have the actual list yet because they had not been published at the time of this recording. But we're
working out their formatting kinks.
Yeah. So at least they're going to be there for people to see. What we do have is faction breakdowns, number of units, times units have been taken, breakdowns, what's been taken primary. We're going to do some computations on what the percent of the field things are to see how close we were on some of our predictions heading into it. I'm going to give some hard predictions on when I think it's going to win, based on the numbers, and see if that's changed by the numbers that we see.
Absolutely.
Might as well talk about some odds while we're at it.
We're gonna handicap the LVO here.
Yeah, I think
who's craving the action?
Look, it's Vegas, man. We should be talking about this stuff. I'd like to talk about this stuff for as many tournaments as we get information on.
We've got enough data now that I'm sure there's someone out there that could endeavor to handicap the LVO. I mean, this is another cool little stat that a friend of mine passed off to me. He was taking a look at what the competition was like, and 60 of the top 100 from the ITC will be playing in Vegas. So 60% of the people in the top 100 will be there. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's good.
That's like one of the biggest GTs I've ever been to, of just the best players pretty much in the world at this point. They're coming from everywhere.
But it's still going to be, it could be any man, any given Sunday with these games out here, with enough games being played. People that I think there's a of the field there, even though it's a large number, I think there are many of them that can make it into that top 8 and then just make it happen.
You can only play the game that's in front of you, right?
Yep.
So you only got to win 6, maybe 7.
Just don't be on the cusp, man. Just don't be on.
That's right.
Yep. Just win big, right?
Smash them all, as the Brits say.
So let's jump right into the stats. We've got some releases that, of course, we want to talk about. Some things that are very important to Chris and I. We want to talk a little bit about our sponsors. We want to talk about some FTN t-shirts I'm going to be putting up, make available pretty soon. New t-shirts, things that have never been seen. It's going to be a good show.
I'm liking it.
Okay. So the statistics that we have, Val, where do these come from?
Thank you for mentioning that. This comes first and foremost from our friends at the Best Coast Pairings, BCP, which will be driving the whole event at the LVO. If you don't have the BCP Player app, you should. It's amazing, and allows you to look up lists.
It's available on Android now as well.
Android and Apple, whatever, iOS. There you go. And the actual number crunching was done by our friend at 40kstats.com, and there's a lot more than just this data set there. You can actually see a really cool, basically everything since midsummer. Any major GT that's had published lists, he's crunched the numbers and gotten some really finite data on. It's some of the coolest stuff you can see as far from a 40k data perspective. So anyway, he was given an early look at some of the lists and was able to crunch this. And then on top of this, one of the reasons why everybody is putting in all this effort to use a formatted list submission is actually BCP will be running a crawler and actually breaking down the stats to the unit level. And we'll have some really cool data sets coming out of that once lists are in a finalized form, and that stuff should be coming out in the next week or so, and you'll be able to see that on Frontline Gaming.
I know I use BCP to follow along when I know my buddies are at tournaments that I can't make it to. You can actually log in, and if you're not a paid subscriber, you can still see the tournaments from within the span of the couple days of when you're looking, and you can follow along and see how your buddies are doing.
It's actually one of the coolest things, or buddies, or known entities out in the 40k universe actually follow. I know it's just you'll be doing something on your Sunday and getting sidelong glances at your phone, just seeing how that tournament's shaping up. And now there's also on top of that the proliferation of actual live coverage of events. It's pretty cool how how, before, 40k tournaments, you were really opaque unless you caught a podcast about one. Now you can follow in real time or even see games in real time. It's really cool.
That's probably what I'll be doing on Super Bowl Sunday, to be honest.
Watch look at BCP
commercials, man. Gotta watch those commercials. I made a prediction that all the Asarani races and factions would total up to be about 30% of the field. That was my guess.
Bold.
It's not, but it's not that far off.
It's a big slice. It's a big slice of the meta.
It's about, well, I think you're looking at it before. It's a little bit over 18%.
Yes. Well, yeah, pushing 19%, almost a fifth.
But that includes Harlequins, Yannari, Craft World, Drukhari. That's all the space elves.
Yes, and
all of them together.
And believe it or not, actually, one primary Corsairs list. I guess someone out there gunning for best in faction. 2
Corsairs.
2? Well, they're in 2 detachments. They're primary detachment in 1. So
gotcha. And I also see a Dark Mechanicus. I don't even know how one gets Dark Mechanicus.
That is part of what it takes to be Dark Mechanicus. You gotta know that arcane lore.
I guess so.
You gotta be able to go deep.
You gotta be able to handle that scrap code.
Look,
in fact, I wonder if that is actually just scrap code.
If that's your thing, and I think you're pretty much a shoo-in for that faction award, especially when you're in one list. The one.
Well, this is based on, I think there's probably anywhere between 50 and 100 more lists to come in that were sort of the latecomers. So you never know. There could be a couple more Dark Mechanicus guys trickling in after the deadline.
Oh, maybe that'll push us up to the 30% predicted.
I don't think they'd all have to be playing Yannari or something.
I wouldn't rule it out.
Could be. They are sneaky, so maybe that's what they're trying. They're just taking that warning. They're gonna eat it, and they're gonna use their sneakiness to win the tournament.
So my hands-on favorite for winning the event is Orcs. How are they represented in the field?
So unlike your prediction, mine is bang on. I believe I was quoted as saying 7 to 8% of the meta. They're 8.22% of the meta, which is kind of neat. Well, I've been following these stats. That's about 1% more than the way where they were just after their codex released. So that means that beyond your base of orc players, they've also probably added a few people, some converts. We know at least one of them, Nick Nunabody. But getting back to one of my points I made I don't know if it was last episode or the one before. That's actually just 55 lists, out of the 650 that are playing, or 750. What are we at, Chris? Do we know?
But we're looking at probably at least 800.
Yeah. There's 657 primary detachments in this. So there you go. So that's what this is based on. But I mean, the real big headline numbers, which probably aren't too surprising, is Imperial Knights, Astra Militarum. As far as primary detachments are concerned, that's 20% of the meta right there.
Combined?
Yes.
Knights?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then that's primary. So Knights primary actually has the biggest share. They're at 10.2%. Although
that's with 67 lists. They list Knights as their primary detachment.
So that's 67. 3 Knights or more probably lists, but they appear in 22% of all lists. Astra Militarum are just a bit below 10%, but they appear in 25% of all lists, which is pretty heady numbers for those two detachments.
Being Loyal 32.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of it being Loyal 32. Man, my biggest surprise here has actually been just the low numbers for the various Space Marine lists. I mean, there are more primary detachment custodian guard lists than there are Space Marine lists. And Space Marines, generally speaking, I mean, I've been judging the LVO for several years, tend to make up the largest portion of armies that show up at the event.
But that's just a testament of just how the Space Marines are doing right now in general. And that bolter drill ain't going to help.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I think, a lot of people who are bringing the Blood Angels, the Dark Angels, the Grey Knights, all of those people, they probably have the Loyal 32 in their lists. And the ones that don't, those are the diehard fans like me who just play it because it's what they love. And maybe they also love the middle tables too. Who knows? But I mean, it was very interesting because last year, we had that sort of ninja Blood Angel player who made it to the top 8, and it was very interesting because nobody expected him, and it was a large list full of Primaris Marines and everything. No one was expecting him to make it to the top 8, and a lot of it can be chalked up to the opponents that he got. He didn't have to fight any of the sort of the gatekeeper Eldar lists on his way up to the top, and he was able to win that way. And that's something that could absolutely happen again.
As far as, absolutely. And I mean, especially with things like Deathwatch have been podiuming, coming in real high in a lot of lists. I mean, if you look at Deathwatch, in a lot of tournaments recently, Deathwatch are primary in 3% of all lists out there. I know, Andrew Gagno is running, I think, a Deathwatch primary list. So he's one of the best players that's around.
3%. That's, we're 20 lists.
So, yeah, we're 20 lists primary, I think 27 lists, so that means there'll be another 7 lists with them secondary. But, I mean, when you add up all of the Adeptus Astartes keywords, though, you're still looking at 14% of players are bringing, 13.39% of players are bringing Adeptus, power armor.
So that's true, but some of them
haven't quite disappeared.
Well, I mean, some of them are for other characters, like there are strengths in some of those Marine sub-factions, the Blood Angels and stuff, but the base Marines, they need a lot of help, and I think this screams give the Space Marines some help more than anything else we've seen.
And there's a large proportion of, there's not a lot of, primary Blood Angel detachments, but there's a lot of secondary detachments, which means Supreme Command's probably full of Captain Smash, or maybe, a battalion with some scouts and Captain Smash. There's certain units that people are still bringing because they still do work, but it's kind of cherry picking the best that comes out, and it's a consequence, of course, of. You could call it Soup 40k, however you want to call it. There's a lot of mixing and matching going on, and you're going to see a lot more of these secondary detachment inclusions as people are trying to buff up the power of maybe what their favorite or their primary list is.
Yeah, the Blood Angels captain has although decreased in prevalence quite a lot, he's not gone away by any stretch. There's 8 people bravely running Blood Angels as primary, but there are 35 secondary Blood Angels attachments. So 6% of the meta will have a Blood Angel in it, but it's probably just a smash cap.
And a total of 60 Sanguiniuses represented at the event so far.
Yeah, there.
Oh, is there actually? Do we actually have a count on that?
60.
I'm pretty sure that the devastation of Baal only left the captains alive at this point, based on these numbers.
We'll talk about predictions here in a second, but I want to talk about some of the staggering number of models that we'll see in some of these units. Taking the top spot, Grotesques. 426 Grotesques represented in the field right now. Not units.
Based on the conversions that I saw, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean,
people have been passing off their model conversions.
Let me come to defense a little bit. The Grotesque has 1 model, so if you don't want 20 copies of that model in your list, you got to break it up. And thankfully,
I'm just saying,
model.
I've seen a lot of them.
But even the vampire count ghouls. Not the ghouls, the large things.
Are they the Vargeist or whatever they're called, or are you talking about
whatever? Those are strong contenders for the models, but whatever. I'm just saying, 436 individual models just in this that we see so far. I'm willing to bet a few more sneak in. I bet that we get closer to 450 once all said and done, 500 once all said and done.
It's interesting to me how fast the meta shifted towards Grotesques. I feel like I might be wrong about it, but I feel like they're a late arrival to the party where a lot of the Drukhari Bogeyman unit for a long time was the Talos, and you can see that the field would definitely be adapting to the, I know Reese hates this, but the magic boxes. Enclosed ruins available at the LVO, where infantry keyword is really essential. The infantry keyword is really, really essential, so you got to be able to get inside those enclosed ruins, and the Grotesque is a gross thing to do that with.
The Grotesque were a response, in my opinion, to a mature meta, and they're just such a tanky unit while still being able to put out a fair amount of damage.
I think in an open field, you probably would still do an equivalent amount of points in Talos. I think the Grotesque just complements a lot of what Drukhari does and are able to get into places that the Talos just can't. Yeah,
Talos is a strong model. I mean, heck, we even considered that for our Adepticon team tournament was 30 to 40 Grotesques and as many Talos, so we can put cram as like 2 Talos a list.
Yeah.
It's a very strong, very durable thing. And when you put in an extra element of survivability with the ruin structure at this event, I think that screams it's a very strong choice. And obviously people have keyed into that. And I was talking about the 60 Sanguiniuses. That is strong. There are 114 Taloses here.
Yeah, that's also not surprising.
Mm-hmm. Or I mean, you can take a squadron of 3, but I'm willing to bet, that's still spread out a bunch of lists.
Yeah, the Drukhari are the number one, represented Eldari faction. I think, quite rightly so. Of that 18, almost 19% of the meta share that they have, they're right around 7% of that. So they're definitely the biggest slice.
247 company commanders. That
sounds like realistic Imperial Guard numbers, if I'm being 100% honest.
What do you... what do you say to that though? That's people that say I don't care about Headhunter. You got to find. That's like Brant from a couple shows is like you got to find my dudes.
Oh, for sure.
Yep. Yeah. That's kind of the place that I approach this from. I just kind of take Headhunter for granted, and sometimes I play coy, and sometimes I go all in.
This is lower than I would expect. There are 66 Plague Burst crawlers.
Well, there's just not a ton of Death Guard, period, right?
So maybe it's a high number for the number.
Yeah, I think it's just every single Death Guard player is probably bringing 3. So, like,
47
there's
Death Guard players, 47 Death Guard lists that we're aware of.
Yeah, where they appear. Yeah, so I'd say in all 47, they're there to bring the Plague Burst Crawler or something very close.
Yeah, and then 115 Blightlord Terminators.
That is crazy that there would be 115 Blightlord Terminators, but what can you do? I think stuff we were talking about before, you're going to see, like if you look at the Vigilus stat, I'm just curious to see how many of the what's the thing that the sword wraith guys use? What's the name of theirs?
The Wraith Blades?
Yeah, the Wraith Blades. Are they Sword Brethren? No.
Sword Brethren are Black Templar things.
Yeah, those are Black Templar guys. Which are you talking about the name of the sword that they carry, or are you talking about the name of the unit?
Don't they have a specialist attachment that benefits them quite a lot?
Oh, you're talking about the Vigilus detachment?
Yeah.
I'll look it up while you're forming your...
I think there's actually a very small amount of them. I was just taking a look at that. The most popular Vigilus attachment by far is actually the Emperor's Wrath, which is no big surprise.
No, really, yeah.
Because that's so easy to plug and play.
That's suppressive fire. So the reason the Emperor's Wrath is so, in my opinion, so popular is that you are able to pick a unit and have their movement if you get a hit on them in the... what is it? No, I'm sorry. Let me look at it right now. The unit cannot shoot this phase. Instead, it lays down suppressive fire. Pick an enemy infantry unit that is within range of at least one of its weapons. Until the start of your next turn, the enemy unit cannot fire Overwatch and halves its movement characteristic. That's the Emperor's Wrath suppressive fire stratagem.
And also, there's the ability to shoot twice with another model. Same cost, different strats. So you can, if you bring it, whether it's a Wyvern or a Manicore or whatever it might be, you can just throw that into your battalion that you've already brought. Your Loyal 32 becomes, a couple tanks as well, and boom, you got something that can really take, bites out of, Horde infantry or really anything that's trying to charge at you. It's a super handy tool.
The Wraith Host has a Warp Spawn Bane sword. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it was actually the Wraith Host. I was curious to see if it was in use a lot, and it actually isn't. I don't see it represented once, which kind of surprises me because I do know, or I do think Wraith Blades are being taken, just like the Blightlord Terminators and other big tough units. That Ganya list I was referring to. I'm pretty sure he's bringing the big bad Dark Angels Terminators. So there's all kinds of those big mean infantry units. The Grotesques are an example of that. Those are going to be, I think, a big story. One cool thing from the Vigilus stuff is that the Dreadwad detachment is featured in 23 lists, and the Orcs have 54. So almost half of the Orc lists are bringing the Dreadwad detachment.
Naysayers,
and I'm one of them. I am one of those
miscreants. Told me I was crazy.
Yeah, I told you were crazy before Vigilus came out, all right? And this clearly changed the math on it. Also, something I picked up on the Shock Attack gun, which, I've been playing it wrong in the practice games I've had, is that if you roll that 11, you get mortal wounds in addition to the hits and damage. In the index, it wasn't in addition. It was, you get it instead. So it makes it, so you can literally one-shot a knight with that thing. It's crazy.
I've got a spot with Scary that I'm going to stick in here in a couple of minutes, and we actually talk about that a little bit, just how brutal that is, because everyone is being on the receiving end of it. It is awesome.
Scary was at a practice GT over the weekend with myself and a bunch of people from around the Toronto area, and he was up against a local Orc hero, Mike Grove, and Mike rolled pretty hot. I'm sure he'll tell the story with his Shock Attack gun.
with the Dreadwad shock attack gun.
Dreadwad Shack with the Relic Shack attack gun. It's probably like the souped up Shack attack gun or something like that. I'll look it up during the break. But it's pretty rad, and yeah, it's cool. One thing that I would love to call it is just are you surprised at how few Tau there is?
What's the Tau representation?
They're like 6.5%.
And then does it appear like they may be in Riptide type builds?
Oh, I would think that they're, I know I don't know the exact details of how these will break out. Obviously, we don't have the scoop on the list yet. I know overseas, they've been swinging heavy to broadsides, like big to broadsides. Like,
we don't have that stat.
6 to 9 broadsides, right?
Yeah, we don't have that stat right now, we don't have any insight into what is being used by the Tau.
It would probably be, it's a combination, likely Shadow Sun, Riptides, broadsides.
Thousands of Fire Warriors.
Probably just minimums enough to get your battalions. So probably like 2 battalions and I think a pretty common build would be 2 battalions of Tau, one probably like Vanguard of Sacia to get, the Marker Light strat and some good re-rolling Marker Lights with the Fireside Marksman.
Well, we do have a breakdown of the Septs.
Yep. Yeah, you can see that in the Septs there, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like Tau Sept is by far the most popular.
Yeah, and then I would assume Sacia is like a distant, but nonetheless the only one in second place. Yeah. So basically Tau and Sacia Sept is all you get with Tau.
But that seems to
I'd
be
be expecting to see several of those Yavara suits as well. And a billion shield drones.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, those 3 Boar concept detachments that you see on this breakdown, that's probably the Yavaras that you'll see at the LVO. Because you're probably not running Yavaras that aren't Borcon, but we'll see what's up.
I've seen them several times, and there's some local Tau players who swear by them, but they are definitely on the expensive side.
I mean, if you have a swarm of shield drones, it's you could also have these days 9 broadsides at a reasonable cost, just throwing out an ungodly amount of shots, which is a thing.
But those are still solid lists. I shouldn't say solid lists. Those are still staples for people right now. Is something a lot of shield drones. But this could be. We could see some. I can't wait to see the list on that. See if there's been any innovative tech. Jumping back to the Drukhari, Prophets of Flesh that are at 44 list, but Cabal the Blackheart is still number 1.
Yeah.
Of course, with the Agents of Vect, even after the increase in command points from the recent, or I guess the most recent big FAQ, this seems to be still the go-to. Because it's such a spoiler. It is such a headache. You can really wreck somebody's plans. Many of these lists that we're seeing here have a couple of gimmicks. And if you can disrupt that gimmick, it's going to give you a game and give you an easier round.
Yeah. I mean, Orcs especially, I think, are super vulnerable to Cabal the Blackheart. I mean, they're powerful enough without their strats, hopefully to be able to play around it or at least draw out those counters. But, I mean, that's why... Honestly, I don't know if you want to talk predictions yet, but I find Drukhari and Eldari to be very intriguing in general.
Okay, I guess we can talk predictions after the break with Scari.
Cool.
If that's okay. Catechin's number 1 choice for the Astra Militarum. Cadian's a strong second. I think that's what you see out there most of the time. I don't see any big revelations there.
That's actually, what's interesting is that's flipped since, say, the summertime. Summertime would have been Cadians over Catechins. But I think as that Castellan Guard list gained in prevalence and power, and especially that Strachan combo with the Catechins, it's gained definitely in popularity. The Catechins have overtaken the Cadians.
As far as Chaos Space Marines go, Alpha Legion still in the top spot. I did not expect that. I'm not sure what I expected, but I guess Tide of Traders is still really strong.
Yeah, we're also not talking very amazing numbers here, Paul. I mean, how many detachments of Alpha Legion?
15? 13 total lists, right?
13 lists with Alpha Legion. 27 lists in general with Chaos Space Marines in it. I mean, that's some rookie numbers there for Chaos Space Marines. Hopefully they can bring them up. So maybe the cultists have Chaos in general. We haven't really spoken to, but it seems like Chaos in general seems to have taken a backseat to both Xenos, Eldari, and Imperium.
Well, Demons still seem to have a pretty good number of lists. I guess. If you call 73 for detachments and a total of 67 lists that we see right now.
Yeah.
And it's Chaos Undivided is giving Nurgle a pretty good run, but I'm willing to bet even in that Undivided, you're going to see a lot of Plague Bearers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the unit breakdown that we have here is still, it's not exhaustive, so I'd be curious to know once he gets around to counting up all the plague bearers, all the infantry, guard infantry, all that kind of stuff. What the raw numbers will be on those guys, it'll be big.
I think this is showing though that if you want to be in demons right now, then Nurgle is where you pretty much have to be.
Yes.
Yeah. Alatok for the Asherani, by far the number one.
Yeah, I mean that one's sort of like Tau with Tau. Like it's just not even a conversation on that front.
Well, the neg one to hit is just so strong. I guess even with I don't know. I've departed away from wanting to take flyers. I mean that could just be because I want to insulate myself against as much as possible. But
that crazy flyer list, I think, won the Element Games. It's not. It's the Caledonian Uprising, I think it's called. It's a UK tournament, but one of the big time Scottish players out there, he was running almost an entirely flyer list, and I think he won that one, and he got very close to the top tables of the Last Chance Open in the UK. So there you go. Maybe your list still has legs, pal.
It could be. I mean, I love playing it. The Sisters of Battle have more representation than the Grey Knights.
Oh,
it's unsurprising.
Well, they have more, rules.
Well, even with the point changes with the Grey Knights, obviously was not enough to give them a big resurgence, or people are just not wanting to get too risky with their choices here for such a large tournament.
Yeah, unless you're gunning for that top Grey Knight slot, which is something. I mean, the coolest trophy, I think, available is actually the best of faction at the LVO. They're the Forge World resin trophies holding the chainsword.
Oh, nice.
So, going hard in the paint with, Grey Knights or some other, that's why I think we see the Dark Mechanicus and and the Corsairs representation is, it's a good way to backdoor your way into a trophy.
That's really cool, though, if you are an enthusiast of the faction. And I believe that these folks, obviously are.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a break. We'll come back, do a segment with Scary, and then come back with just us three here.
We're sponsored by Firmaterra. With their sturdy, lightweight and portable tables, you can make war anywhere. Please visit them at www.firmaterra.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to a very special segment of Forge Narrative. My name is Palmer, your host. I'm joined by Scary from the Scarcast.
Hello, TPM. Thank you for having me on the show once again.
Anytime, man. It's always great to have you on. I was a guest on one of your sit-in chats. I'd like to do that again pretty soon.
Oh, that would be great.
If you'll have me.
If not this Sunday, then soon after LVO, definitely.
You recently played in a 5-man tournament. You fought some of the list that...
5 rounds.
5-round tournament. And you battled against some of the lists that we've been talking about on the show as contenders of things you're going to see out there in the tournament world. So I think it was kind of cool that you actually encountered that way far away from where I am in Canada. Well, you're in Canada. I'm in Georgia.
That's right. Near Val, right? So, Val was there actually, brandishing his orcs. So that was really fun to see him. But yeah, we had a good representation of what the meta is going to be looking like. It was a cool practice event for the LVO.
And you battled against Necrons, which I think is surprising because from what you were telling me, you actually battled them in round 2. And so if you're doing Swiss pairings, that means they would have won their first round.
The Necron player I played with Sebastian, and he ended up being middle of the pack, but his list surprised a lot of people and did win, I believe, 3 out of the 5 games that he played.
So what was in this list, and how did it? Was there anything novel or surprising in the list, or was it just coming down to how he played it and how well it did in the missions?
It was very well played. Sebastian has a lot of practice. He plays exclusively with his Necrons, but there were some elements there that you see often, namely the Doomsday Arcs. So it was based around a trio of Doomsday Arcs. The Necron jet bikes, I don't know what they're called exactly. They're little jet bike guys.
Mm-hmm. I understand that.
They went down in points because the weapon upgrades, the weapons went down in points, and they're a lot more efficient than they were before. So those jet bikes are actually really good.
They put out a fair number of shots, and they're mobile.
With their Tesla, they're pretty nasty. So we had a big block of them around the destroyer. We had a couple of units destroyers with destroyer and cryptek. And then to round off the whole army, he took a Necron pylon from Forge World, which is a giant cannon of death, which essentially spells the doom for any knight out there.
It's pretty good at one-shotting single targets. So like a knight or a flyer, if they have somebody is playing a Storm Raven or a Storm Eagle or something like that, the pylon can put some heavy damage on them.
It also buffs the units around it and has lots of wounds, so it gives everybody like a 5-up invulnerable save around it, and you can deep strike if normally you wouldn't. So he just parked it in his zone, just shot.
It's a lot of points.
Yeah, like most Forge World things are, but
it can flip a game. It can give you
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's not the Hellblades. I forget what those flyer things are called. Also.
Yeah, it'll come to me like after we're done recording, and I like put the phone down. I'll
Everyone
be like,
listening's
"Oh,
already
Tomb
told
Blades,
us
I
what
think
it
they're
is.
called.
Yeah.
Tomb Blades.
Tomb Blades. That's right.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, just had to think about it a little bit longer.
So I knew that everyone listening had already told us what it was.
I know they're like yelling at the audio recording. It's called a Tomb Blade, you morons.
That's right. God. Just the things. I wonder what got in there to push the Tomb Blade out. Like what do I now know?
yeah. Wraith Blade, Tomb Blade, Blade of Blade. You know, knowing the new GW naming like mechanics, anything could be a blade of a blade.
And then you played against the orcs that had the Super Shock Attack gun.
That's right, yeah. Mike played against Mike Grove. You know, he's a well-known orc player from here in Ontario and Canada. He's been helping Mini Wargaming build their bunker, which has been really fun to kind of watch his Instagram and posts up on that. And he was running the Shock Attack gun mech. He was running big, a blobbed up unit of looters, bunch of grots, and 3 giant blobs of boys supported by war bosses and some weird boys, and a trio of Dakka jets, which are very efficient for their point cost.
Really? You like those?
I don't like facing them. They have 18 strength 6 shots, but when they shoot at the same target, they get +1 to hit, so they hit on 4s, which makes it one of the most efficient orc shooter units in the whole book. So they can go in and just wipe out smaller units of infantry, or just really focus fire and take out targets. And when you factor in Dakka, or the fact that they have a stratagem that gives them +1 to hit things that fly, because they're speed freaks or whatever, they can really do some work, hitting on 3s against like flying things, or the stuff that has keyword fly.
Okay.
Which you don't think from an orc. It's like, oh, they hit on 5s, so not Dakka jets. Dakka jets are mean.
It does seem to be a lot of shots. I just think that the flyers themselves lose a little bit of their invulnerability, not their defensiveness that they had before because of the things that you'll face. But, I could be wrong. This guy obviously did pretty well with them.
Yeah, it's about how you use it. It gives that you to kind of wrap your characters, because all of a sudden you've got these big planes being able to snipe out your characters if you didn't screen them right. In ITC mission formats, they can really help with things like recon or behind enemy lines, or, and they have a good amount of volume of shots to deal with the meta trends we're starting to see, which goes towards a lot more infantry heavy lists.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what wins games.
Exactly. More boys, less toys, right?
It's so hard. It's so easy to get caught up in the toys, though.
Yeah, all those upgrades. But yes, he was running a Shock Attack gun relic from Vigilus on a Big Mech, and let me tell you, that thing is scary. It is terrifying.
Dude, people laugh every time I bring this up, but until they see it in action, I think it's...
Yes.
I mean, you need a little luck. You need a little bit of luck.
You do, but you can kind of squint it in your way. Every time he'd roll the strength, and when one of the dice was a 5 or a 6, he'd spend a CP to re-roll the second dice.
Yep.
So he had a really good chance of getting that strength 11 or 12, first of all.
To get extra mortal wounds.
Right, because every time you roll a hit, it's D3 mortal wounds. Let me tell you, when that thing went off, it went off huge. He shot at a unit of Talos, got 10 shots at strength 11, hit 9 times with Dakka and rerolls included, and did 22 mortal wounds on my unit of Talos. I've never seen a unit of Talos die so quickly.
That is pretty strong.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was a little flabbergasted by that.
Yeah, that's the way it reads. So every successful hit inflicts D3 mortal wounds on the target, in addition to any normal damage, and it still does D6 damage.
Oh yeah, he basically, that little Shock Attack gun nuked 3 Talos that were completely healthy off the face of the earth.
You could technically, use a stratagem to make it shoot again.
Yeah, and there's 2 different stratagems to shoot again. You have one from the Vigilus book, and then one from the Bad Moons as well.
Yeah, it doesn't suck. All for the low price of 1 command point.
It's amazing.
So, the Ork, I know we talked about this a lot, but I'm telling you why I've been saying some of the things that I've been saying. So, the Ork player starts with 18 command points. you burn 4 or 5 before the game starts, and you're pretty much set for the whole first part of the game.
Yeah, and you get like, and especially now that we're starting to see a trend to the changing the deployment style, of being able to deploy your whole army and then the enemy deploys the whole army. Things like the redeploy from the thinking cap and stuff like that, or that warlord trait that orcs have, will start coming really in handy as the missions start changing.
I'm not sure that, I think it'd take a fundamental change in the game to have those adopted to tournament missions, but
I know in the ETC they've been adopted already.
Well, I'm a big believer in mission innovation. That is one of the ways that we can truly balance this game outside of everything else. I mean, we can have, I'm just saying, weaker codexes and weaker strategies that are able to exist inside of a tournament world where missions make victory attainable to those types of things. And if that means changing up the deployment, if that means changing the deployment, then that's what it means.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Being able to change the missions and kind of like not have to. And that's one of the things I loved when you were running some events. I think it was when 7th edition was in like full swing and everybody was like, errating everything and changing rules. And you were like, you know what, we're just going to let it be. But our missions are going to be the thing that are going to balance the field. That's
one way to do it. I mean, it's not the only way, obviously, but it is certainly one way to do it. So I encourage people to continue to try to want to innovate a mission design. And if that means incorporating some things, because that's in books and chapter approved. And you want that familiarity for people that are getting out there, getting into the tournaments brand new. You want to see some things, whatever. Again, I didn't mean to dismiss it out of hand.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, I totally understand. And I think that you can really get creative as a tournament organizer. As long as it's and it's something I'd recommend if you're a tournament organizer out there, looking to create an event that has like, a variety of different missions that kind of are catered towards, balancing the playing field in your local meta. Just make sure that it's posted out there and people have a good idea of what they're getting into, so that there's no like blindsided feelsies badsies.
Ricky on the show, in his area, they don't really like to play with any well-established or popular mission set. They like to do their own thing.
Nice.
Sometimes their own thing is just running book missions. They mix it up, and more power to people out there doing it. I think it's anything that gets people in your area playing more and feeling like they've got a good shot, so much the better. You experimenting with something and then posting about it makes somebody else experiment with it, and that's how we continue to get innovative and fun mission sets.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a lot of fun to have something that makes you think and just kind of like think outside of the box, where your army that you basically use like clockwork over and over and don't really think too much about it, all of a sudden it kind of breathes new life into the list that you've kind of built,
Absolutely agree. So did you take anything different with that in mind? So, I mean, you play Drukhari pretty much exclusively.
Yes. I do have, I dabble with the Harlequins, and I have a couple of Nari characters and the Black Templars. They have a special place in my heart. I'm actually staring at my Land Raider Crusader. Beta rules. Beta bolters.
Don't do it. Actually, you know what? Give it a shot.
Yeah. I have my Storm Raven, but, I just really I just don't like that Grot, as you were saying, can like lean on the Land Raider and boop, it doesn't work anymore. I have actually. I've kind of switched my list around a little bit. And the list I'm taking revolves around the same core that I've been playing, but I've added in some Scourge, which are the deep striking bird guys.
Yep. What did you put on them as far as, I assume 4 weapons of some kind?
Yeah, 4 weapons. I have 1 unit with Haywires, and I have 2 of them with Shredders.
Yeah, Shredders. 4 Shredders is where it's at. Yeah.
Things are incredible.
Yeah. Especially, are you taking the obsession that allows you to extend that range, or?
Well, you can't do it with Scourge. Don't get access to any of the obsessions. But if you are playing with, say, Trueborn, which the event you're going to allows Index is a good choice. You can have 4 Shredders instead of 3. You can have 4 Shredders in the unit, the same as Scourge. It's cheaper. Don't get the deep strike, but yes, I would go with the extra range more than likely, and then put them in a Venom so that you have a Venom and the Shredders at 18 inches for maximum efficiency.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal against orcs. I mean, we've talked about that before, but it's D6 shots that reroll wounds against strength 6 that reroll wounds against infantry.
Oh, it's not just orcs it works against. That works against a whole bunch of stuff. Plus, it's -1 AP, which is something that a lot of people don't see coming. But those 4d6 shots, like on the low end, it's pretty crappy, but on the high end, it's incredibly strong.
Yeah, it's an average of 12 to 14 shots per volley.
Yeah, on the low end, it's about 10. On the high end, it's about 16.
Hitting on 3s,
18,
probably re-rolling 1s at some point.
Well, they don't get rerolls because they're not Cabal. But, yes, hitting on 3s is good.
Oh, you're talking about the Scourges. I'm sorry, I was thinking about Trueborn.
Yes, Trueborn. Trueborn will get all the rerolls.
We have a little bit different mindsets. Again, in my list, I had to replace my fly. I didn't have to. I chose to replace my flyers, and I replaced them with Trueborns and Shredders.
Yep, I replaced my Razorwing with the Scourge. The only reason I'm not using Trueborn is because I'm practicing for ETC, which means that I'm not allowed index choices.
Yeah, understood. Okay, well, fair enough. The Scourges you're not going to go wrong with the Scourge choice.
Oh, no. And having that free deep strike is really powerful.
I mean, even if you had maxed out your slots in a detachment and you had some points left over for a Scourge unit.
Yeah, it's 92 points, so they're not, it's really good for what you get.
Yeah, so being able to annihilate scoring units, troops.
Nothing is safe when they're flying around.
So was that the biggest change for your list? But did you take that?
Change,
did you take that in reference, or I guess in answer to which you thought you're going to see orcs or high model count infantry armies, or was this the whole deploy your army completely reaction with the ability to deep strike?
I think it's going to be a good choice based on the meta change, but I didn't make the change because of that. I made the change because I saw them in action at the Sudbury team event. Jason Sparks, played with 2 units of 5 with Shredders. And he used them to terrible efficiency. And I loved it. And when I played against him, I saw the good tactical use of them, and it kind of opened my mind to try them out. And I'm very glad I added them in.
Nice. Well, please let us know how it goes. I've been very pleased with them and how they perform for me.
Yeah, definitely. I'll make sure that I hit you up on the Twitters.
What's the structure of your army list that you plan on running? How many command points you're rocking? What are you burning? So this is what I would like to know.
You want all the juice, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So how many command points are you rocking? How are you getting there? And then what are your pre-game combat point expenditures, if any?
Absolutely. So I start with 10 command points. I have a battalion, spearhead, and outrider detachments. I spend 1 command point to go for the Alliance of Agony. I have an Archon, Writ of the Living Muse, Labyrinthine Cunning Archon, surrounded by Ravagers. Great 400 and some point section of the army. Then with the Homunculus becomes a warlord, and he's accompanying Uri and Rakath in their Prophets of Flesh battalion. And I usually spend 1 of the command points that I get to get a Vexeter Mask on him based on who I'm playing or what army matchup I'm doing.
What does that do?
The Vexeter Mask.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a relic that you can't overwatch against the bearer. So if he charges, you can't overwatch him. And then he can pick an enemy unit within 6 inches at the end of the charge phase. And that unit cannot, or the start of the fight phase, that unit cannot fight until everybody else has been picked to fight. So even if they charge in, you pick that unit and they stay still.
I can see some value in that.
Everybody else. That is game winning. That'll single-handedly win you a game. When you have 20 Gene Stealers coming at you and they charge in and you go, you don't get attack until my Tailors have attacked, or you have a Knight Gallant run into your Grotesques and you go, you don't get to attack until my Grotesques have attacked you. It's very powerful.
Yeah, no, I agree. Sounds good.
Then I have a unit of 10 racks, a unit of 8 racks, a unit of 5 racks. They're like the mainstay tough troop units, 4+ invul, toughness 5 around a homunculus, very tough to get rid of, plus they can redeploy with the black cornucopians. So you can jump around the board edges with that, and they re-rack, so they're it's like a Tide of Traitors. You can bring the whole unit back, which is amazing. And then 2 units of 3 Talos with twin haywires, chain flails, macro scalpel. Most efficient sort of build. You can deal with infantry hordes, you can deal with tanks, and Talos are point for point probably one of the best units in all of Warhammer right now. Because they can just do everything, and they are hard to kill. And 7 Grotesques, which are the meat shield, giant blocks of meat that you put out in front of the army and soak up pretty much everything that goes at them. And then to round that off, I have the Outrider. It's got a Succubus, so she usually goes for the 3+ invulnerable save from the Cult of Red Grief as her warlord trait for the Alliance of Agony, and then I have the 3 units of Scourge in that Outrider. And she's equipped with a Shard Net and Impaler, so she'll go and top up infantry units, which is great.
So, any other additional combat point expenditures in the pre-game?
Nope, that's it. Sometimes I'll spend a few points to deep strike, a unit or 2 if I need to. Some of the Ravagers or the Grotesques or Racks or something if I need to. But normally I'll just have the 10, spend 1 for the Alliance of Agony to get D3, and then spend 1 for the Vexillor Mask, and that's that. I'm quite good at not spending my command points. I've had opponents have 18, 15, 20 command points, and they've spent them all by turn 2. I start with 10 or 11, and I usually have some still by turn 3, 4, sometimes even turn 5.
A miser. I prefer to burn them all as soon as possible.
Yes, 100%. It's just when it comes down to it later in the game, that 2 CP stratagem, if you saved up for it, it can turn the tide of battle.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I hear you. Well, Scary, thanks for coming on and telling me some of your secrets.
Yeah, no problem at all. Just before LVO, it'd be fantastic.
Yep, hopefully we're able to connect in Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely. Just wanted to give a huge shout out to everybody who stepped up. Had some kind of a wrench in the plan to get to Vegas, and I basically did a call out to the community, and the community stepped up, and you guys mean the world to me. Thank you so much. Thanks to you guys, I'm going to be able to get to LVO, so I'm super pumped about that.
Heck yeah. Well, I will certainly put a link to your show in my show notes so people can find you if they're not already familiar with you. And then we'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you, and I can't wait to have you on the live sit and chat on a Sunday.
That'll be fun, man. Have a good night.
You too, Paul. Thank you so much.
FTN is brought to you by Discount Games Inc. Please visit them at www.discountgamesinc.com. And don't forget to ask Jay about ways to save even more on your hobby projects.
Hey everybody, we are back. Hope you enjoyed that spot with Scary.
The dog kid.
Yeah, he's got his insight into list. That's another one of those, faction enthusiast guys. Really enjoy how he's been able to be successful regardless of the strength of the codex, which is, when you have it to fall back on, it's great, but you still got to be playing the games. And
Well, I'll tell you, I wish I had realized how good he was at Warhammer well in advance of the ETC last year. I don't know if I've talked about this here, but I just kind of always assumed he was, kind of a fluff bunny because of his dedication to sadistic space elves. And then the codex came out and he started winning GTs, and I just didn't sort of clue in that he's also super good at 40k. So he's taking the longest route to the LVO, I think, probably of anybody, even those traveling from a far distance. So good luck to him, and I hope it all works out smoothly for him.
Also going to be some words from our sponsors there. Please continue to support them as they support us. Discount Games Inc. and Firmer Terror. Please check them out if you have not already. We talk about them because they're good stuff. They wouldn't be represented on the show if they were not good people doing good things. So please check them out. We really appreciate it. Before we get to the predictions, 355 Dark Reapers. I'm willing to bet that gets closer to 400 as the other lists start to trickle in.
Mm-hmm.
Seems reasonable.
Still
how many?
strong.
I'd be curious to know how many units. I would bet those units are getting smaller, just so you get lots more Tempest launchers.
Yeah, Tempest launchers is where it's at, especially in this environment. We're going to continue to talk about the terrain as that second opponent on the table, either your ally or your enemy. It could be. So it's going to be interesting to kind of unpack that after the event to get people's impressions about how it affected their game. And I'll actually be doing some on-site coverage, talking to folks about that during the tournament.
So, I think they've done such a wonderful job, or much more improved job of explaining the terrain and preparing people for the terrain. Chris, do you foresee any? Do you like the way the clarifications have gone? Do you think it's going to make your life a little bit easier out there?
Well, we can only hope, and there's really no telling until we get there. But generally speaking, like it's all helpful. And I think that, the amount of work that the judges, myself included, have put into preparing for the LVO is really going to pay off as well.
79 tank commanders.
Oh, no, really?
That's a lot. That includes past.
I think a lot of people right now are assuming that, Astra Militarum are still just 30 chumps and two company commanders, but I'd bet there's a lot of meaty Astra Militarum lists lurking out there, and with those tank commanders.
Commissar Yark. This is not surprising, and I'll talk about why in a second. 23 Commissar Yarks.
Okay.
I'm not surprised at all.
Commissar Yark has the rule that he lets you re-roll against orcs.
So 23 may sound impressive, but there's 228 detachments that he could have appeared in.
Well, it's easy to discount Yark. He's got an aura that lets you basically get free rules again, because he's 100 points. He's cheap. He's dirt cheap.
He's not 40 points.
He's not, but he gets you free rules against what we consider one of the strongest lists in the that you'll oppose.
Yeah. He doesn't you can't give orders with him anymore?
Can't give orders with him anymore.
I guess, can you give him the warlord trait that allows? No, I guess he'd be, what would his warlord trait be?
He has a name.
He has a preset one, I think.
Yeah, he must. But I don't think he has a.
Probably does.
Because he doesn't have a faction, does he? I don't think he doesn't have a regiment.
He does not have a regiment, no.
Yeah, I wonder what his thing is. Because maybe his warlord trait is the one that gives you voice of command. Dun dun dun.
Could be. Somebody looking
Regardless,
at it right now.
I mean, I think Astra Militarum probably poses some significant challenges for orcs as they are, even just like catechins. Catechins are basically orcs, dudes, especially when they're buffed up around a priest and Strachan, like we were talking about before. And that new Vigilus detachment, which isn't super widespread, but there's still 16 of the Emperor's Fist, and that allows them to, I think, swing again after they die. Some insane thing. So yeah, I think Guard already represent a pretty fair fight, even without, for some reason, re-rolling everything against orcs. So I don't think a lot of the top lists would necessarily bend over backwards to add Yark. I know if you're an orc player and you happen to run into him, it's just like that's just an unfortunate circumstance. He is fairly rare.
You don't reroll everything. It's just hits, but it's for friendly Astra Militarum units within 6 inches of him.
Yeah, it's hit. And then doesn't it give reroll ones if it's not orcs?
Yeah, reroll ones for anybody, and then reroll any failed hits if it's Astra Militarum, against orcs.
Cool.
He does not suck. Plus, he has the slight invulnerability. Well, he's got the invulnerable save, but then he on a 3+, he doesn't lose his last wound.
Most importantly, he's an amazing sculpt. I really like him. Although, if you really want to go for style points, you could run the lobster claw straight up and perpendicular in the air, original Yark.
That is the one I use when I use him.
I like the new one a lot.
Oh, it's good. It is good, but there's something, I don't know, something magic
about that, like Disco Inferno, Saturday Night Fever, giant lobster claw in the air.
I like it.
Okay. Hey, not going to tell you what you like, man.
Okay, so if Commissar Yark is your warlord, he must have the Master of Command warlord trait,
which allows him to give orders.
Your warlord gains the Voice of Command ability. If your warlord already has the Voice of Command or tank order ability, they may instead issue one additional order per turn.
There you go.
So yes,
I knew there was a way.
Then why are more people not taking him?
Because he costs
Seems
two
like
company
a missed
commanders.
Opportunity.
He costs 2 company commanders, and he's doing marginal stuff for you.
I think re-rolling hits against orcs is...
Again, Paul, getting back to that thing. I mean, your odds are you're not running into orcs.
No, okay, let's talk predictions.
Okay.
Why do you say you're not running into orcs if you're going to be doing well, and we think orcs are going to be a heavy contender?
Well, I guess because you have, of those, how many lists did we say there were? There are 55 orc lists, out of the 650 that are present. How many of them are going to be top tier players? How many of them are just bringing their dudes?
Well, let's talk about it in a slightly different context, if we can. How many of these 55 players you think are going to make it to round 2 undefeated?
Right, exactly. The answer is not many.
You don't think that more than half I'm thinking that 70% of these Orc players win their first game.
Okay, so here's some hard data. So since from the release of the Orc Codex up until around New Year's, you had, so first of all, just to give you an idea of where Orcs came from, they had 1.88, so about 2% of the meta was Orcs before their Codex. They won 35% of their games, and they lost on average in the first round. The Post-codex...
Not looking good for my prediction here, but go ahead.
There you go. No, but Post-codex, it gets much better. Post-codex, they got to about 7.5% of the meta was Orcs after their Codex came out. They had they had about a 49% win rate, but their average first loss was in round 2. And about 8.5% of all Orc players got to 4-0. So that's
we're not talking about one specific tournament. We're talking about
this is all the data that we have.
Data from the tournaments that are on 40kstats.com.
Yeah, there'll be a few, certainly a couple hundred Orc games with numbers like that. So average first round loss is round 2. So I mean, when you look at something like
my prediction's looking better.
Well, yeah, a little bit, but I mean, if we look at something like, say, the Castellan Guard list, they would have, Ynnari especially, they have like a T-Whip, so able to get to the 4-0 mark, somewhere, around, the teens percentage of their total field. So like they're much, much higher represented. Like, for example, like the Ynnari win rate is 65% or 66%, without factoring in when they play Ynnari. So like they're a very dominant list. Whereas Orcs have scrambled back into competence. So like their Codex has lifted them to a very good win rate, about 50-50, but that's not just like sheer dominance like you see with some of the other builds.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking that probably less than half of these Orc players go into round 2 undefeated.
Correct. And if that logic continues on, I don't know, maybe round 3 or 4 they're overrepresented again, but I don't know, we'll see. I mean, I know I'm, going to be doing my best, but my goal is to win. My goal is to win my first game, which is a terrible goal to have because there's a lot of factors that come in against you. But my goal is to win my first game. That is literally, if I win that first game, I could probably go 0-5 the rest of the way and feel pretty good about my life.
Well, that first game is random. I mean, it's complete random pairings, I guess, with club exclusions and the VCP. But
yes.
Everyone plays the guy that wins it all in round 1. So, or has the potential to play the guy that wins it all in round 1.
That's right. I will be competing for the championship for at least one round. That's my goal.
You're taking a pretty strong list. You're taking Orcs, in case people weren't following along.
I'm not thinking that Orcs aren't. I think they're well suited to the meta. I think they're well suited to the terrain. All of those things are good. I just think that you're going to have some really hardened players who've had their book for a long time. And like, the Eldari players, focusing around Drukhari, that's a tough matchup for Orcs, especially in the terrain. You're going to have people who are very, very adept at running their Castellan plus what have you combination. It's just going to be tough sledding out there. I think Orcs have the tools, and clearly some of the best players think they have the tools. So that's why I wouldn't rule them out as winning the whole thing. The odds of you running into them though, like you as in a player who's gone 3-0 or 4-0, I think that's still fairly low. I think they'll be I think they'll be fairly unrepresented at that.
I think at least 23 people agree with me.
23 people?
With the 23 Orcs.
23. Well, I doubt those 23 are top 60 players, I would bet.
Yeah, that's fun. That'd be fun to parse it all out when we get to see it. And then 35 Strakans. A little more safer of a choice.
So yeah, Strachan is less surprising to me for sure. He's been definitely a chestnut of the Imperium build for a while.
When you're making a take all comers list, it's something you can kind of slot in because he does get some decent abilities. He's not terrible himself, and he buffs everybody within 6 inches of him. So
if you're bringing catechins, you're pretty much always bringing Strachan.
So here's an insane some insane stats for example, we'll just pick on Ynnari. So of all the people who've played Ynnari, basically since the summer, 10% of them have gone 4-0. Since the summer, the same thing has been said for Orcs 3% of the time, and I can tell you, aside from Rich Kilton at the SoCal Open. That has all happened post-codex. So there's literally
never count out my boy Rich.
No, Rich is the dopeness. He's doing just fine for himself. Drukhari, 11% of all Drukhari players that have entered tournaments since the summertime have made it to 4-0. It's an insanely high winning faction. 14% of us Astra Militarum people have made it to 4-0. So it's, the orcs just have their work cut out for them. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just gonna be tough sledding.
Do you have on average when they've lost their first game in a tournament in a 5-round?
Yeah, the first game. So that number is insane too. Let's just see here.
A faction like the Drukhari or Astra Militarum.
So Astra Militarum average first loss is in the second round 2.28. For Drukhari, let's just see. And this is all coming from 40kstats.com. Drukhari is average first loss 2.41. Ynnari is 2.69. So there was a period of time where their average first loss was the third round on average.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing by a different game. So even though the Eldar are only, they're under 20% of the meta, I find it hard to believe that it's not their tournament to lose.
Right. Well, just with the sheer number of Grotesques and Dark Reapers,
just with the power of the rules that they have available to them, like in a Drukhari focused Eldari list, you've got Homunculus Covens, you've got Cabal the Blackheart, and if you're smart, you've got a Asuryani Craftworld's detachment giving you Doom and Jinx and all of these extra powers. Not many of which require line of sight. You've got your classic, double or single spear Ynnari builds that won the thing last year.
What the craft rolls have is they have powers that allow your whole army to benefit from. So like a Doom, or a Jinx. Those are one of the reasons that they're so strong is that you get the power off, and then everyone in everything else, the rest of your 2,000 points, gets to benefit from it if you need it.
Correctamundo. So you've got. Say you've got a very strong or heavy Talos build. You've got your Haywire blasters on the back of those guys. Not very threatening, maybe to some things, unless it's doomed. In which case, you're re-rolling all your wounds.
I had Guardians bring down a Castellan in hand-to-hand combat.
Right.
It only had 3 wounds left, but the thing was doomed,
So, and on top of that, a lot of their power is infantry-based, or it can be infantry-focused, which I think is a very key to being, a strong player at the LVO. So, yeah, I think they're good. And then let's not sleep on the fact that Imperium is by far and away, I think, the powerhouse of 8th edition at this point, and Imperium being specifically, the Castellan plus probably Imperial
Castellan
Guard.
Imperial Guard combination. Yeah.
And let's remember before the Castellan was around, Imperial Guard plus a Shadow Sword was essentially what it was, and that list was incredibly powerful and caused a lot of heartbreak. So the Castellan is just that much better.
Even post the FAQ that changed some of the stratagem costs and abilities for the Knights. They still have a very high win rate for Castellan included lists.
Well, sometimes
I think it's well over 50%. So it's still not quite at where you would want it to be in a perfectly balanced world, but it's nowhere near what it was back when it was. Gosh, what was the percentage of lists at Nova that were the Castellan and Loyal 32 and Blood Angel or Custodes or what have you. Like it's still a very good model, and I think that you can still count on it to perform well at the LVO, but I don't think we're going to see the same success rate that it had at events like Nova.
Yeah, the win rate of sort of primary Imperial Knights lists is 55% post FAQ, so that's the big thing. I think, and before that they were at 57%, so that's actually kind of neat to see that kind of an impact, which is exactly what they would have been looking for. And then even when you look at when Knights are a secondary faction to Imperium, they went from 65% win rate, so that's your Castellan build, pre-FAQ, to a 57% win rate. So those are, pretty significant moves based on that. But I honestly think the biggest victim of the fact changes is the Smash Captain. And those lists adapted in different ways to sort of make up for the hurt that was caused to the fly keyword, as well as to just how expensive it was to run the Smash Captain. And so when you were looking at, what am I going to put my resources into? Am I going to spend on my CP that I can't regen anymore, and it's more of a limited resource? Am I going to pour it into the Smash Captain, or am I going to pour it into the Castellan that's going to sit in the back corner of the table and just destroy anything it needs to? You're going to invest in the Castellan, and you're going to find other ways to do what the Smash Captain was. Although nothing's going to do what the Smash Captain was doing in its peak, but you're going to find ways to replace that in your list.
And sometimes just blowing people away with volcano cannons will suffice.
That's a way of doing it.
We were talking a little bit before, about list building and stuff. People ask all the time, how do you spot the value in a codex? Like, how do you start? What do you even use as the basis for building a list around and stuff like that? You gotta look for that value, things that buff in large radiuses around them, things that are easy to buff with a stratagem, such as going to a 3+ and multiple save on a toughness 8 model with 20,000 wounds or whatever.
Yeah.
You can look at that and go, that's a little bit easier to work around. But when you're spotting the stuff that either has a good point value, like I still think Yark is a great point value now. He did get a decrease in chapter approved.
So Yark and Shredders, that's where it's at?
Yark, Shredders. Dooming things is really good.
Apparently, I can agree with you. Dooming things apparently is good.
The things like the Tempest Launcher. You look at it and go, oh, it's only this strength or whatever, but then you just
Who has looked at a Tempest Launcher and been like, oh, that's all it does? Ooh, tell me who this person is.
Look, I don't know, but I'm saying that's what I would, as I'm combing the codex, you think, oh man, that's pretty good.
Pretty sure everyone was like, what? Tempest Launcher is, I remember, Tempest Launcher, stupid thing. There's nothing quite as dumb as 7th edition Warp Spiders, but Tempest, like what the Dark Reapers do. I think Eldari or Eldar in general are like the only faction where I've in a number of cases been like, let me see that. Like, show me your codex. Show me that they can actually do this.
Okay, so what's y'all's predictions? So I'm still taking Orcs as my prediction. Chris, what do you think's going to take top spot? You can go faction, list combination, primary, secondary. I don't know how granular you want to get. Probably easier to go primary.
Well, I'm going to be betting on an Imperium list going to the top this year. It's kind of tough for me. My initial instinct was that Inari or some combination of Eldari, Drukhari was going to do well, but I still think that there's enough teeth in the Castellan, and I think that the Vigilus. I don't know if you want to call it expansion, the formations in there that benefit guard. I think that those are going to be very helpful in solidifying leads. I'm going to go with a Castellan with Loyal 32 and Custodian Guard mix.
42 people agree with you with the Emperor's Wrath Vigilus detachment.
So that's what I'm looking at. So,
and this is an interesting thing. And sorry, Val, we'll get to yours in just one second. But 142 people are taking advantage of the Vigilus detachments.
Yeah,
with what we have.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's what 17% of the field.
Mm-hmm. And about half of those are Emperor's Wrath and Dreadwas.
Yeah. Well, those are the standout. Those are the big winners.
And the Anointed Thong. Let's not forget about that.
All right, Val, what's your prediction for taking this whole thing?
I gotta be on that Imperium train. Notwithstanding what the individual players actually wind up bringing. So the pilot is a big deal here because I think there's a lot of parity at the end of the day between the tippy top list builds at this point. So the actual pilots will make a big difference in this, but not knowing exactly what everyone's bringing right now, I think it'd be hard not to say, an Imperium, aka Castellan plus Guard plus fill in the blank versus I gotta say a Drukhari centric list. I think that's what takes it. Oh, takes it period?
Takes it period.
I'm going Eldari. I think it's Eldari's to lose.
Okay. So and do you think that's more on the Drukhari with all the grotesques for durability? Or are we going to sheer raw power with the Dark Reapers and Unari?
I'm going Drukhari centric build. Okay. That's what I
All right, well it's in the books. So let it be documented. These are our predictions.
What was your prediction?
Orcs? Yes, Orcs.
Okay. All right.
I think Orcs have the tools. I think Orcs are benefiting from the 12th man here in the form of the terrain. I think we're going to be able to see some pretty interesting pivots and table play with all that in mind. And I think they're going to be able to get some people and choke their little scrawny Xenos necks. I think the Grotesques are going to be probably up there though with Contender though. So I'm agreeing with you.
It's going to be less of a runaway than it was last year. Last year, it seemed like not only the prevalence of Eldar, but just the sheer power of Dark Reapers and Shining Spears was really leading the charge, so far as, the strength of the book. I think some of the adjustments since then have leveled it out a little bit, but still plenty of teeth in all these lists, and I'm really excited to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Well, let's take a quick break, then we'll come back and gush about the Sanguinius model.
I just want you guys to know how patient and forbearing I've been waiting for us to finally get to that. It's been freaking torture.
See you in just a second.
You are tuned into Forge the Narrative.
Hey everybody, we are back. Going to talk about Forge World, Sanguinius model.
It feels like I've been holding my breath for like the entire show waiting to talk about this. You guys, oh my gosh.
This thing is freaking epic. People seem to still, look, this thing has been a meme machine.
Meme machine.
Oh, I think it's had the best memes out of all the Primarch sets for sure.
But if people didn't love it, they wouldn't be doing it. This thing, I've seen Sanguinius on a mechanical bull. I've seen him skateboarding. I've seen him.
Surfboard is the best.
Yeah, surfboarding. I've seen him.
Splash Mountain.
Laying on his back in front of Horus. These guys, it's people are doing some work out there.
I tell you, all those people are like, hey, see, look, this is how he should be depicted, dead in front of Horus. I'm like, you're posting that up like Horus didn't just straight up die 10 minutes after that. Like, not that impressive an accomplishment.
This is a good week for Blood Angels. It wasn't the week before, maybe a couple weeks ago, we got
the Terminators.
Yep. And promise of just more stuff coming down the pipe. We're getting the models for Sanguinius. Actually, we are going to be buying them.
That's right. And maybe in multiples, who knows? It's one of those things. I've been looking forward to this model for so long. I've actually spent quite a bit of time following the news coming from Forge World at the different weekenders, because it's been something that's been talked about for several years. I think it was about 3 years ago, the sculptor said that the next Primarch that he wanted to do was Sanguinius, but he was instructed to do Primarchs that already had rules out first, which, fair enough. Fair enough. The people who are waiting for Rogaldorn and for Alfarius, or what we presume is Alfarius, have been waiting quite a long time, since I think it was the third Black Book to get their Primarch. So,
Sanguinius is in a Black Book, right?
He's not currently. The one that he's going to be in is coming out. It's Book 8, Malevolence.
So was the Space Wolves in the last one?
Yes. Space Wolves, Thousand Sons, Custodes, Sisters of Silence were in the last one.
Cool.
It's been very interesting because the sculptor was very upfront about how he was drawing a lot of inspiration from classical depictions of the Archangel Michael throughout history. And if you take a minute to look at, say, a gallery of Archangel Michael art, there's some very common features. He's got a sword or a spear in his right hand raised up above his head, pointing downward, about to stab, either a dragon or a human representation of the devil or whatever. And this model pays direct homage to that grand tradition in art, and it's wonderful to see. I am so happy with this pose.
He's gonna have awesome rules too. It's gonna be beefcake.
Oh, and I have to. It was kind of funny. This comment came up several days ago when the model was first announced. I guess that was just yesterday. Gosh, I've been thinking about it so long. It feels like forever. But I'm participating in the Horus Heresy events at Adepticon this year, and they put up a post because they have a rule about having unique named characters.
That's
and
right. You picked them.
Yeah, I did. I called out about 6 or 8 weeks ago.
You talked about this on the show.
Yeah, Sanguinius. And someone made I think it was Reese actually made the comment to me, that's some great foresight there, just like Sanguinius himself. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was destiny.
Did you swoon at that point? Did you just fully pass out from feeling so good about it?
My face is sore from the idiot grin I've been wearing for the last couple of days. So, full honest, I am in total fanboy geek mode, but it's not just because it's Sanguinius. Sanguinius. I was prepared to be super critical because this character, I mean, I've been hyping myself up for this character, and it's very meaningful to me, and for a bunch of different reasons. But I needed him to look good, and I was ready to be critical. And when I saw it, it took me a while before I could just sit down, zoom in and just look at all of the detail, and I couldn't be happier. So I absolutely couldn't be happier.
What about all the haters? I gotta ask you guys. You guys are both fanboys. Clearly, you're gonna love this thing. I'm stealing your show for a moment here, Paul, because you can't ask yourself this question. What do you TPM say to all the haters?
Look, the model, it's awesome. That's all I can say. It's awesome. He's got, we have all these expectations, and it's so hard to meet the expectations of what we have built up in our minds with very limited art. Like up until recently, there's been very limited art for this character. It's only been in print and what we have come up with in our minds. So after 30 years of expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of build off of what Paul said is I think that the problem with the people who don't like Sanguinius' pose, it has to do with, I'm not going to say unrealistic expectations. I'm sure that's a portion of it, but I don't think that people were really clear with what they wanted from the model to begin with. You know what I mean? Mm. Where they wanted it to be awesome. But what does it mean for a Sanguinius model to look awesome?
Everything's subjective, right? This is something we can look at and form our own opinions of. But I like it. I think
we don't have to treat all opinions as equally valid.
He's got a... he's definitely got a combat pose, which it checks off the boxes for me. Does he have the gold armor? Does he have the wings? Does he have the flowing hair? Does he, is he in a combat pose?
Does he look exactly like Robert Plant?
I actually don't know who Robert Plant is.
Robert Plant?
I'm going to take your word for that, Val.
Oh, he's lead singer of Led Zeppelin.
So much to teach this guy. So much to teach this guy.
He's the golden god. Come on.
I've listened to Led Zeppelin. I don't know all the names of everybody.
That falsetto.
I've heard Sting from Dune. I've heard that he's got the look of Sting from Dune, which
Googling this as we speak
is kind of funny. I think that so far as my in-depth examination of the character, the sword is pretty well representative. They put a basket hilt on it, which has been if you look at the Sanguinius art from books like Ruinstorm, from some of the other recent Neil Roberts art that's been done for Horus Heresy book covers, he has the exact same sword design as in the classic art. Like there's the piece of art that is Sanguinius' classic death pose. The Emperor approaching Horus on the steps and Sanguinius there with his sword broken. It has that same structure to it, but they added a basket to it, a basket guard, which I feel like is a pretty cool addition, a neat modernization to it. It has the proper gems on his armor that represent Terra, Baal, and the moons. And it's supposed to symbolize the connection between all those. It has the animal pelt on there, which was...
Yeah, what's with the leopard, man?
So that is the first creature that Sanguinius killed after joining the Emperor and swearing fealty to him. So that he had that turned into a kind of an ornament, a coat that he wore. So that's what that's all about.
Just looks cool, dude.
Yeah, it's really cool. And the paint job is really solid too. I love the depth of the golds. I feel like there's a lot of really solid detail in there. I mean, the only thing, and I think that's fairly criticized on there, is just the base seems kind of underwhelming just from what we've seen so far. Well, but we also know there's another one coming, a more decorative one coming. So I'm kind of holding off until I see that before I do the final verdict. And so far as things that are easy to change, the base is one of them. I'm very excited to see what else is coming. I'm excited to see what his rules are. I have several contacts over there in England who are going to the Horus Heresy Weekender on Saturday. Who
you got little birds out there.
All the birds, all the winged birds.
The sword is a little bit of a departure from the book art that we've seen, but it is the pose and the sword itself is very in line with the Archangel Michael as depicted by Guido Reni's something like the 1600s or something. That
1636.
It's very evocative of that. And I think that's cool. This guy is, I mean, one of the things that's common throughout the books is that Sanguinius is an angel. He's a representation of the things of old. It's in the stories. I don't want to get too gushing about the stories or whatever, but
I do.
That is a reoccurring theme that is one of his crosses to bear. See what I did?
Yeah.
That is something that it's a way that the other Primarchs and other people see him. And so for that to make its way onto the miniature, I think is pretty nice. It's bringing a lot of subtextual things together.
Yeah. The significance of that can't be overstated. I mean, Sanguinius' name, and I explained this, anybody who's heard my blood coverage on Carl's Blood Angel Show of Force that he did with me, I think it was last year. No, it was 2 years ago now.
That was 2 years ago. Whoa.
Yeah. Well, technically like a year and a half. It was year 2017, but it was in the summer, so it's like a year and a half ago. But Sanguinius has the name Sanguine has a lot of different meanings. Sanguine as in red, a bit on the nose. Sanguine as in bloody, again, right on the nose. And sanguine is in hopeful. So sanguine has multiple meanings, and he is kind of the embodiment of hope. And calling on those cultural subtexts in this sculpt, it's so difficult because when you look at someone like Horus, or if you look at someone like, say, Fulgrim or Mortarion, it's a fairly straightforward process. There isn't a lot of subtext to those characters in terms of symbolism. They're not angels. They're not. So bringing that representation to a model, I'm sure, came with its own host of challenges. And I think that it was extremely well executed. And I know that not everybody feels that way, and that's fine. Art has its own subjective nature, but I think, once we see more angles of this miniature, and if you really take the time to break down the symbolism and realize what Sanguinius is, who Sanguinius is in the story, beyond just the tragedy and the killed by Horus jokes, you will see that this character, when Horus kills Sanguinius, he literally kills hope for the Imperium. And
it's a lot to put on a little piece of resin. But
yeah,
but anyway,
I do not envy the guy who had to try and capture that in just one frame, right? But I think he did an amazing job.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to make their own opinions about what the actual look of the model, but as a Blood Angel player and everything we just talked about, it checks off the boxes, so I'm happy with it.
Let's also not forget that the internet poops on everything that's beautiful. So
That's true.
And I find it hilarious to think of Gilliman when he was first released. I think the only one who 100% who's the evil Thousand Sons guy. I'm blanking, guys. Magnus. When Magnus was released, he got pilloried for some reason. He was beautiful from the start. I think the only one who's escaped any criticism is Mortarion.
Yeah.
Mortarion's pretty universally loved.
Yeah, which is, I guess it's just because he's very boring. But both Magnus and actually Gilliman too, for comparing him against the 30k model, he's pretty bold choices are made on that Gilliman model. Anytime you take risk, like a dynamic pose or whatever, like things like that, you're gonna get some contentious response. So I'm glad to see that the fanboys are happy at least. It's probably just haters with no skin in the game who don't understand the very deep layers.
I don't want to cast aspersions. This is art. This is art and people can think about what they want.
Yeah, let's be fair. People care a lot about the model, even if they weren't really specific or didn't really know what they wanted, or even if they just had a different vision in their own head. I think that it's a testament to the appeal and the power of this character that there is such a dynamic response one way or the other for how he looks.
Just keep the memes coming, people. Keep the memes coming. Yeah. They've been hilarious.
There was a GIF that I saw that was just endlessly Sanguinius sliding down a railing, and it was he just repeated that, and it looked like he was perpetually going down the railing, and I thought, wow.
I do think that maybe a little bit of this is also just the angle of the photo. They may not have gotten that golden angle. Sure. I think something a little more head on maybe would have helped a bit. We'll see. Because we'll see.
Well, I think that the photo was deliberate so that people would draw that connection to the old, Guido art.
All 25 of you guys out there, those art history majors and 40k lovers, where that convergence is. That
we all turned into scholars, Renaissance scholars.
I'm on the 40k lover side of that Venn diagram, but I have a very deep passion for
Renaissance art.
this hobby. And I spend a lot of time looking into figurative meanings, studying that kind of thing. My dad's a historian. And, if you look at history, you have to look at art because art is just a reflection of history. So there's just so much to love.
Well, aesthetically, like the Forge World 30k decals for the Blood Angels have some of these reliefs and stuff in them. It's a very themed line for the 30k stuff and whatever. So it's right in there with it. I'm down.
It's amazing what a bunch of metalheads who hated Margaret Thatcher have led us all to talk about tonight.
Finishing moves this week. I've been painting 7 Imperial Guard tanks, and I've been using that weathering strategy that I've been talking about for a long time now. And people keep asking how I do it. And it's all product, and I've actually gone and I've given a pretty good description on Twitter at Warmaster_TPM. So I won't bore you guys, the longtime listeners, with the details on how to get that weathered effect again. But if you are interested and just want a refresher or didn't catch it the first time or whatever, please feel free to reach out. Happy to talk about it with you. It's one of those things. It's just all it's technique, It's just so I'm happy to share the products that I use for people that want to get similar effects. And you don't have to use this color. You can use this technique for any color that you want. But that does bring me to talk about the Lothran blue that I use. Is an incredibly bright color, and it looks terrible when you paint it on flat. It just doesn't look, it looks chalky. It doesn't have any depth to it. There must be something about the way that the paint is composed. You get a very consistent color, but it just wipes out any of the detail of what you put on. You have to shade it. But once you start shading it, that color comes alive and it loses some of its kind of over the top pastelness, and it starts to get this kind of this deep appearance to it, which I really like, and that's what's playing on the tank. If it didn't have the shading and the recessed washes, they just wouldn't look good. It wouldn't have that appeal to them. But you wouldn't get that if you didn't take that bold color choice to begin with. But more on that again. Talked about that in the past. Won't bore anybody with it now. But if anybody's interested or just wants to try to replicate or a little bit of refresher on what we talked about, feel free to hit us up through any of the channels on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. I'm Fights with Dice on Instagram. I'm just starting to post some stuff over there. So I think I just figured out how the messages and comments worked over there. So if I was a little late to respond to some people, I apologize.
If I might make a comment, because you sparked it with Instagram, I've recently become aware of a Saul Weffelfinger on Instagram, and I must find out who this person is.
Hit him up, ping him.
I don't know how to ping. I don't know how to do the DM thing.
There you go.
I started an account just so I could track this person.
There you go. Later in February, I'm going to put up some pre-orders for some t-shirts. These are t-shirts designed by GoBoy, a very popular 40k image designer. But it's the logo we use on the YouTube page for our icon there. So, which, by the way, please like, comment, and subscribe. We have a great comment section on YouTube. That's a place where people seem to like chat about the show and leave their comments. Sometimes just telling us what we got wrong, which is also fine. Good discussions, and I really appreciate people taking the time to do that. But if you are interested in getting a t-shirt, watch this space. It's one of the ways you can support the show. Hitting up our sponsors is a great way, but supporting us directly is we're going to be doing it through some t-shirts that we have not offered in quite some time. But these will be brand new designs.
Yeah, well, I'll get one. Put me down for one.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. So we've nailed in our predictions for the LVO. I'm calling orcs. Chris, you're calling some kind of Imperial soup. Val, you're saying Drukhari heavy Eldari builds.
Yep. Bum, bum,
See
bum.
how it plays out.
You have the bold. I think you've got the boldest prediction here, Paul. Although not necessarily, because you got Nanavati and Matt Red on your side. So.
No, I think that Paul has a pretty safe bet. I mean, and knowing the quality of some of the longtime Ork players, and of course, it would be very difficult to make a case that know, Nick Nanavati would choose an awful thing to bring, something he didn't feel like could win all the way to the top. I think that it's going to be close, and I really hope to see a diverse group of lists in the top 8, especially because I'll have to watch those games, and mirror matches are no fun.
And thank you for pointing out my cowardly call there. I just name dropped big names. Screw those chumps. I want to talk about guys who've been playing orcs this whole time. Rich Kilton, not Steve Pamprine, but nonetheless, I prefer him. Ben Jurek, some of my dear green-skinned brethren who will hopefully prove me wrong and take it to the promised land.
Awesome. There may be 2 episodes this week when we have some Gene Stealer cult stuff to talk about. So depending on when you get to this, If you see 2 downloads,
you're going to ambush people with your Gene Stealer
Cult.
Cult.
Come out of nowhere with the Gene Stealer Cult episodes. So, maybe it'd be cool. We'll see.
Very, very themey.
Yep. Guys, thank y'all for joining me tonight. And we will be recording next week, so it'll be a normal show for people that aren't at the LVO. The very next day after we record, I'll be traveling to the LVO. I assume that's the same travel day for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're at the tournament, please come up, say hello. Happy to chat.
Yeah, definitely say hello. Hopefully you're not saying hello just to have me come and make a call at your table. No, but in all seriousness, it's always great to be walking around the tables and have someone be like, hey, I know your voice. So don't hesitate to say hello. It's always great to interact with the people in person that we get to geek out with online.
That's what the LVO is all about.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for listening.